Fall in Tampa, Florida. Perhaps it doesn't have the same appeal as, say, fall in New England. Well, you can't have everything. And one thing they have had at Tampa Stadium this fall is a football team that's won. Last season, the Buccaneers did not win at home until the end of November. This year, the Bucs and head coach John McKay entered their Week 6 matchup with division rival Minnesota with a 2-3 record, both victories coming in the friendly confines. As a matter of fact, McKay's Marauders are looking for back-to-back wins for the first time since 1982. Quarterback Steve DeBerg has guided Tampa to both of those victories since taking over the starting job from Jack Thompson. And today, DeBerg will face the worst-rated defense in the NFL. Cause for concern for the youngest head man in the league, Minnesota's Les Steckel. Steckel is a former lieutenant in the Marines who served in Vietnam, and his call to glory took him to Minneapolis, where he was asked to follow Bud Grant as the coach of the Vikings. It has not been all smooth sailing for the 38-year-old Steckel, but today is an opportunity for his Vikings to make a mark in the highly competitive, yet not overly strong NFC Central Division. These are two teams that could well be at the crossroads of their 1984 seasons. Both are striving to reach 500, the mark of respectability and the first step in the attainment of bigger and better things. And in the NFC Central, you never know what a few victories might do. From Tampa Stadium, it's the Buccaneers hosting the Vikings on the NFL Game of the Week. The strong Bucs defense was no match for Minnesota's varied offense in the game's early going. Mixing the powerful running of number 46 rookie Alfred Anderson with the quick timing passes of quarterback Tommy Kramer, the Vikings moved the ball well on their opening possession. Kramer's sideline strike to Sammy White, number 85, put the ball a yard shy of the end zone. From there, Ted Brown, number 23, powered it in, and Minnesota had the lead 7-0. Brown's burst capped a 9-play, 78-yard drive that consumed nearly 5 minutes. It was offensive play calling at its best. Of the 9 plays, 5 were runs and 4 were passes, all of which were complete. On Minnesota's next series, Kramer went almost exclusively with the passing game, and it remained successful despite heavy pressure from the Bucs' defensive front. Kramer was establishing the offensive rhythm he liked so much, attacking the defense with a mixture of short and medium-range passes to his backs, like this one to Ted Brown, and an occasional long ball to keep things honest. And on this, the Vikings' second possession of the game, Kramer laid a beauty in the arms of 5'8" wide receiver Leo Lewis, number 87. Catch by the Smurfish Lewis placed the Vikings on Tampa's doorstep for the second time in the opening quarter. The first trip ended with a touchdown, and so would this one. Following a holding penalty that pushed the ball back to the 13-yard line, Kramer hit Brown across the middle, and the 6-year running back had his second touchdown of the contest. With over 6 minutes still remaining in the first quarter, the Vikings were clearly in command. The 14-0 score reflected 2 long, sustained drives and showcased the poise and veteran leadership of Kramer as he used his wide receivers and his backs to keep the solid Bucs defense off balance. For Brown, the touchdown catch was nothing new. He has been one of the better receiving backs in the NFL since he began in 1979. And his 83 receptions in 1981 placed him third in the entire league. That second straight victory was proving elusive for the Bucs. But a 2-touchdown deficit in only the first quarter was no reason to panic, and quarterback Steve DeBerg aggressively took control of Tampa's offense. First, DeBerg fired a 25-yard strike to wide receiver Kevin House, number 89. Then, on a 4th down and 2 yards to go in Minnesota territory, the Bucs quarterback gambled, and it paid off when his toss to tight end Jerry Bell, number 82, picked up 18 yards. The Bucs were now the ones putting together a long, sustained drive, and they too got in the end zone on this 1-yard pileup by Edger Armstrong. Armstrong's score cut Minnesota's lead to 14-7 and marked the 3rd time in the first period alone that a team had gone more than 65 yards to score a touchdown. The Bucs were right back in the game. All they needed to do was to shut down Minnesota's offense. The Vikings behind Tommy Kramer were moving the ball crisply and easily. But Tampa's defense asserted itself in the second quarter, led by number 52, linebacker Scott Brantley. Brantley's interception was the game's initial turnover, and the first of 3 that the Bucs would force in the second quarter. Tampa had excellent field position inside the Vikings' 20-yard line, and it did not take long for the Bucs to tie the game. Kevin House caught the 7-yard bullet from DeBerg for his first touchdown of the year. And Tampa, with over 12 minutes to play until the half, had quickly and authoritatively bounced back. Another look at the score shows that House simply overmatched Vikings rookie defensive back Jeff Coulter, number 43. DeBerg immediately saw how wide open he was and drilled the ball without hesitation. The surprise in this game was not the closeness of the score, but rather the number of points scored. 4 touchdowns had been rung up in slightly over a quarter of play, and the Vikings were ready to add on another. This beautiful Kramer to Sammy White connection brought the ball to the Bucs' 1-yard line. Other than Brantley's interception, Tampa was simply not stopping the Vikings' offense. On the next play, Kramer hit second-year tight end Mike Mularkey, number 86, for the score. And Minnesota's 3rd touchdown came as easily as the other 2. This game was not billed as a matchup of 2 of the NFL's most explosive offenses. Defense was expected to prevail, and it did again for the Bucs when their outstanding defensive lineman Leroy Selman, number 63, recovered a fumble caused by his line mate David Logan deep in Minnesota territory. The Bucs defense, playing without injured All-Pro Hugh Green, had forced its second turnover of period 2. And Tampa, trailing 21-14, was in excellent position to tie the game for the second time. 2 plays later, tailback James Wilder, number 32, danced into the end zone. And with just over 5 minutes to play in the first half, the Bucs and the Vikings were all even at 21. Wilder has quietly emerged as one of the finest all-around backs in pro football the past 2 seasons. Primarily a receiver out of the backfield in his first 2 years, he has become a dominant runner. And at 6'3" and 220 pounds, he is both powerful and sleek. 5:15 remained in the half. The game was tied 21-21. The Vikings had plenty of time for another long march, and they would do just that. But yet again, the turnover would rear its ugly head. Over 5 minutes remained in the first half as Tommy Kramer and his teammates plotted their strategy for a final scoring drive. A drive that they hoped would give Minnesota back the lead it had enjoyed in the contest's early stages. In retrospect, it was both the Vikings' most stylish and frustrating drive of the game. Ted Brown in the ground game hummed like a finely tuned auto collector's classic, and the Vikes zipped right through the off-balance Buccaneer defense. The real star of this impressive drive was wide receiver Mike Jones, who caught everything he could reach. The 23-yarder by Jones was not the longest play of the game, but it may have been the prettiest. In his second season, the young man out of Tennessee State has come from virtual obscurity to make himself the most dangerous pass target on the Minnesota roster. But after the Vikings' best play of the game, they then committed their worst. On a call that was in dire jeopardy from the start, Minnesota ended a great drive, not with a bang, but with a blooper. The fumble was recovered by Tampa Bay's Leroy Selman, and instead of a touchdown, or at least a sure 3 points, the Vikings had nothing. In hindsight, this turnover deep in Buck territory may have ultimately decided the outcome of this game. At the time, however, the local fans were just pleased to see the contest still knotted at 21. And they had even more cause to rejoice as the third period began. Steve DeBerg came out firing, and after one false start, the Bucs whisked downfield on the strength of his 6th straight pass completions. Tight end Jimmy Giles chipped in, as did the running game of Michael Morton and James Wilder, who found few problems probing the right side of the Minnesota defense. DeBerg then capped the drive with a touchdown toss to number 87, Gerald Carter, and the Bucs lit up the scoreboard again. Carter's tightrope touchdown was made possible by his fancy footwork and some gritty resolve in the passing pocket by DeBerg, who stood in while blitzing linebacker Scott Studwell measured the quarterback for a sack. Studwell arrived just a bit too late. The pass, however, was right on schedule. At one time, Tampa Bay had trailed by 2 touchdowns. Now, midway through period 3, the Buccaneers had their first lead of the afternoon, a lead they would not lose. The Bucs now had visions of expanding their 7-point lead, but such plans were in for harsh revision as the Viking defense suddenly became most unpleasant. Where gaping holes once flourished, the Bucs could now find only Viking tacklers. But one vision did continue to persist: the continuing pass-catching capers of marvelous Mike Jones. Jones helped move the Vikes into scoring range, but then the Minnesota running game was shut down for one of the few times during the day. When the Bucs made this critical stop midway through period 4, the Vikings were forced to settle for a Jan Stenerud field goal. The Tampa lead was trimmed to just 4 points, but that was only a temporary condition, thanks to the individual efforts of Buck wide receiver Kevin House. House had already scored 1 touchdown, and he set up another with this 55-yarder. Scoring honors were then entrusted to James Wilder, and suddenly the Buck lead swelled to 11. For Wilder, it was relatively smooth sailing as he rolled into the end zone. But that happened because Buck guard Sean Farrell, number 62, blocked 3 different Vikings during the play. With that kind of escort service, Wilder, Tampa Bay's leading rusher, made it look simple. Now the Bucs had their biggest lead of the game, but there was no time for celebration just yet. The Vikings had moved the ball with ease almost all day, and this next drive proved no exception. Ted Brown's slick run out of passing formation surprised Tampa, and then Tommy Kramer kept the pressure on as he continued to pepper the defense with pass completions to the ubiquitous Mike Jones. After Jones' catch and subsequent sideline impression of Pete Rose, Kramer then looked for other Viking receivers and found them, but this was to be expected. Tampa was playing a soft defense, encouraging the short gain to help eat up the clock. Minnesota moved downfield, but it would take 16 plays and nearly 5 minutes to score. This ultimately left them little time to mount one final march for a victory. Kramer finally worked the Vikings into position for a score with consecutive pass completions to Ted Brown. Then fullback Alfred Anderson swept left end, and Minnesota had narrowed the margin to 4 points. Right after the score, the Vikings tried to recover an onside kick, but failed. Where they did succeed was in stopping Tampa Bay from picking up a game-clinching first down. The Bucs were forced to punt, and the Norsemen had one last chance to pull it out. But that opportunity was quickly lost when Kramer threw a ball that was picked off by Tampa Bay cornerback John Holt, number 21. With that play, Viking hopes faded for good. With the win, John McKay's Bucs evened their record at 3-3, good enough for second place in the NFC Central. Many preseason pollsters didn't like Tampa's chances in 1984. Right now, they're only a game behind the pace-setting Chicago Bears. As for the Vikings, things are running just about true to form. New coach Les Steckel is putting his stamp on a team that's rebuilding, a team that did a lot of things right against Tampa. That even included outgaining the Bucs by well over 100 yards. But as ex-Marine Steckel can easily tell you, you can win such battles, but sometimes still lose the war.